side and slightly behind them, so it doesn't interfere with the person's view.
Be okay, yeah.
And you understand the context of this event?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, yeah, sort of like it's you know,
made up
science,
yeah.
but you know, you make it look a little less.
You should have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah.
Last year's ASL interpreter was making us like the hit with the internet.
Oh, okay.
The video of her on the keynote has gotten almost 1 million views on YouTube.
Oh my god. Okay.
And it was mostly because she was
here.
Yeah, it was here.
Oh, okay.
And it's mostly because she was signing hilarious things.
Right. Okay.
And so as long as you have that roll with it attitude,
right,
you're gonna have a good time.
Okay.
So
good.
I would have you sort of mark a spot over here.
Okay. You know the name of the interpreter last year?
I don't remember her name.
Okay, that's fine.
There are two. That's why.
Right.
Okay. And I'm going to introduce you to the presenters.
Okay, great.
So they all know who you are.
Great.
I imagine that that could be a very relevant factor, but again, I have not investigated it.
Thank you. Dr. Hansen.
Sorry, I can be a real dumbass sometimes. I thought of that joke last time, right after he ended, and I just had to do it. I'm wondering if your hypothesis might explain some of the early dates I went on to the movies. My hands would get really sweaty, and I had to pee. Please.
What did these events take place in a movie theater?
Sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah. Well, I mean, you presumably were experiencing mental stress. So again, the physiological response should certainly have been similar. Whether modern fiction played a role would depend on the choice of movie.
It's usually the sexy ones.
So, does this mean that we're going to have Avengers sequels forever?
Probably yes. And furthermore, it means not only can we expect a larger number of increasingly stressful films every year, but we should celebrate it. We should be glad for this. We should put pressure on our congressmen to ensure that this is delivered. Yeah.
All right, our third contestant of the evening is Rachel Hertog. Rachel is a paleontologist from the Bay Area. She spends an inordinate amount of time thinking about clams and would love to have beer with a brontosaurus.
We live in a world filled with mammals. They're on every landmass and have colonized the oceans and even the air. You probably spent your whole day interacting with mammals, and now you're here in a room filled with them. But the world hasn't always looked this way. There we go. For 180 million years, the world was ruled by dinosaurs. So what happened? How did we go from this dinosaur world to mammal world? Okay, sure. Evidence points to a very large rock hurtling in from space and smacking into what's now Mexico. But while that was undoubtedly a terrible, terrible day for everything that lived in the immediate vicinity of the impact, it doesn't explain how animals halfway around the world also vanished. Now, numerous hypotheses have been proposed to explain the disappearance of dinosaurs, including the hay fever hypothesis, which suggests that sneezes and itchy eyes are what did the dinosaurs in. The cataract hypothesis, proposed perhaps unsurprisingly by an ophthalmologist, who believed that dinosaurs developed cataracts more quickly in the heat of the Mesozoic and were unable to find mates or food and subsequently perished. And then there's the too dumb to live hypothesis, which posited that dinosaurs invested a little too much energy in growth and not enough in developing their brain capacity and became too stupid to survive. The poster child for this hypothesis is the Stegosaurus, shown here with pupil for scale, which famously had a brain the size of a walnut. My hypothesis, which is yet unpublished, is that dinosaurs were simply too drunk to survive the end Cretaceous. Some background for people if your paleontology is a little rusty. This timeline shows the Mesozoic with important events indicated by arrows. We get our first dinosaurs and mammals in the mid-Triassic, followed by avian dinosaurs, otherwise known as birds, in the Jurassic. And then right before the end Cretaceous, we get flowers. With flowers comes fruit, and with fruit comes booze. So we have the evolution of a novel intoxicant, and anyone who's ever been a teenager at their first kegger or been to Burning Man knows that novel intoxicants can be fun but challenging. It's no coincidence that a mere 40 million years after the appearance of booze-producing plants, dinosaurs were gone. While mammals, due to some distinctive morphological and behavioral characteristics, were able to relax and persist in the face of total ecological collapse. Now, unfortunately, I can't go back in time and offer drinks to dinosaurs, as much as I would like to. Luckily, one group of dinosaurs managed to make it through the end Cretaceous, and birds are notorious drunks. Multiple towns have actually had to construct drunk tanks for birds that over-imbibe in order to save them from their bad decision-making, like snuggling up with predators or picking fights they have no hope of winning. Mammals, on the other hand, are champion drinkers. Pin-tailed shrews drink the equivalent of 9 glasses of wine every night to no ill effect. Woo! So at this point, you might be asking, what's so bad about being drunk? Well, being drunk puts you at risk, not just to predators, but to yourself, your friends, and your potential mates. Many dinosaurs were sharp and spiny. Good times go bad quickly when you get a spine in your eye or other sensitive areas. Mammals, on the other hand, were soft and fuzzy, much nicer to cuddle with, which could aid in social cohesion in times of stress. Many dinosaurs were bipedal, and trying to balance on 2 legs is way harder than trying to balance on 4. Especially when all you have are those puny little forearms to catch yourself. The fossil record preserves some trackways, and well, this is not a sign of sober walking. Mammals in the end Cretaceous remain in their quadrupedal ancestral state, nice and close to the ground, vastly reducing the chance of injury in case of a stumble. Coordination isn't an issue only on the ground. Flight while drunk is extremely dangerous, and this poor guy's a goner if he ever gets up in the air. On the other hand, we have fruit bats, which are able to navigate a maze with a blood alcohol level of 0.3, which for those of you keeping score is the equivalent of 15 drinks for an average-sized man. In summary, dinosaurs were spiny, upright, uncoordinated, unable to fly, and almost certainly drunk. While Mesozoic mammals were soft, close to the ground, coordinated on both land and air, and probably just pleasantly buzzed. The reason we live in a world of mammals is not because we were faster or smarter than the dinosaurs, but because we excel at intoxication. So as you leave this evening and join your fellow mammals in a drink or two, raise a glass to our tipsy ancestors and watch out for drunk dinosaurs. Thank you.
Dr. Hansen.
I'm wondering, presumably there would have been earlier emergence of certain fungal and herbaceous mind-altering substances. I'm
Yes.
curious how you think that dinosaurs were able to survive with those present in their environment.
Well, it's possible that they just avoided those substances, or maybe enjoyed them so much that they adapted to their uses.
Follow-up question.
Yes.
Wouldn't the carnivores have been a little more hungry in the presence of those things?
That's possible, yeah.
Okay.
Dr. Bondar?
I was wondering, so the theory proposes that the fruit
Yes.
is what caused the intoxication. Are you then assuming that the solely predatory dinosaurs became drunk from the residual effect of eating drunk prey items?
So I think probably what happened is that, so the animals, the frugivores, are the ones that are eating the fruit and getting drunk, but that could precipitate a widespread ecological collapse. So that they could disrupt the food chain, and then that would affect the carnivores kind of indirectly, and they're not getting drunk off of eating drunk
I
animals.
see, okay.
Dr. Eisen?
Well, I understand you may not be able to go back a few 100 million years or so. Have you thought about recreating dinosaurs and testing whether or not this theory is true?
Yeah, I think that would be fascinating. Yeah.
Dr. Hurd?
Yeah, so I'm thinking about ways to test this as well, and it occurs to me that if I were to get into a boxing ring drunk with an ostrich who was also drunk,
Yeah.
your hypothesis means that I would win.
It means, yeah.
That's scary.
I don't think that's true.
Our fourth contestant of the evening is Andrew McGee. Andrew is a researcher with the Moore Lab in the Department of Evolution and Ecology at the University of California, Davis. He works on phylogenetic methods and large-scale studies of the tree of life.
So, I would like to talk about the adaptive value of disillusionment, or as I like to think of it, why it's so good that it hurts so much when your dreams get crushed. First off, dreams. Everyone's familiar with dreams, but let's get one thing clear. We don't mean the sort of dream that's really trippy that you tell your friend about the next day. We mean the sort of dream that makes you go out and do something, sort of an aspiration. Now, much like Lincoln here, you might associate some of the biggest dreamers in history with being some of the biggest figures. I'm here to tell you they were dumb. Now, dreams are bad. Dreams come with a whole range of selectively unfavored phenotypes. But on the other hand, I guess they make you feel nice sometimes. It's pretty clear, a live dream is a very bad thing for you. Now, I say live dream because a dead dream is something quite different. When a dream dies, it gives you a chance to refocus on the evolutionarily important parts of your life. And in fact, a dead dream and the act of dream death is quite beneficial. And let's be clear, my hypothesis is that the only adaptive benefit of dreams is that it hurts like hell when they get crushed. Now, a problem. Dreams multiply. They go all over the place. We're all familiar with this. If we look at an example of someone who wants to be a scientist, and she starts thinking evolution or ecology, good fields. She starts thinking about population genetics and phylogenetics, and it just spirals. And if this looks like a phylogeny, that's because dreaming is indeed a branching process. Or at least you can model it as such, which means we get something like this. You'll note, the y-axis is logged. Dream accumulation is exponential. It just keeps going and going. And if one dream is bad, 500 dreams is a hell of a lot worse. So, what could save us? Dreams die. Dreams die all the time. It's perfectly normal. On the everyday, it looks something like this. Someone wants to help people, and she starts thinking maybe psychiatry, maybe psychology. And then one day she just decides, fuck it, psychology. It's normal. But, and bear with me because this is going to get a little crazy, where things really get fun is with mass dream extinction events. Mass dream extinction events are like large dream extinction events with a bonus. So, let's take a look. Let's go back to our friend who wants to help people, and she starts thinking about being a doctor. And that comes with a whole range of doctor-like dreams. And then she pursues these dreams to college, like most people, to a biology major, and then she hits OChem. And she doesn't want to be a doctor anymore. Now, where it gets really interesting is that if the force of the trauma, here OChem, is strong enough, this doesn't just wipe out wanting to be a doctor. This dream extinction event can cascade down through the tree. And indeed, it can leave her not wanting to help anybody at all. And this is really good. I mean, not for us, but it's good for her, because dream death is really, really adaptive. Because when a dream dies, it hurts. The more dreams that die, the more it hurts. The more likely you are to go out and engage in sudden acts of fitness. And what you're also seeing here is that different people have different sensitivities to dream extinction, which is quite important. The people in the darker shades of red are quite fit. They are much more sensitive to the effect of dream extinction. Whereas the people in the lighter shades in the yellow, the research professors of the world, will continue to plod on, and on, and on. Now, let's talk about some evidence, because this is science and I have evidence. First off, let's talk about some of these great people that are quite dumb, in fact. Let's talk about Sun Tzu. We all know him. He wrote The Art of War. We don't know any of his children because he never had any. Joan of Arc. She saved France. She never saved her genetic material. Alexander, it turns out, wasn't so great at having children. Alfred Nobel, he blew a lot of stuff up, then he gave away a lot of money, but he forgot to give away his gametes. And then Mother Teresa, who, it might shock you, but wasn't actually a mother. Now, clearly, these 5 people had way too many dreams and not enough mass dream distinctions in their life. But I think perhaps our best evidence is shown in this chart. This tracks the percentage of childless women by the amount of education they have. And I know I've been talking about high school and college like this is dream-crushing thing, but education is a dream shield. It's only in academia that you will find people spending 2 years trying to get 2 pages published in a journal they're never gonna get near. The real world is full of things that are good at making you refocus. It's full of bosses and taxes and bears and death and just a whole bunch of things that crush your dreams and they keep you fit, hence more children. Now, in summary, my hypothesis is that the only good thing about your dreams is that it hurts so much when they get crushed. Which is why I would like to thank everyone who tried to crush my dreams, because whether or not you knew it, you had my back. Thank you.
Anybody want to help crush his dreams? Dr. Eisen.
When people have multiple personalities, and they have differences in their dreaminess, not in your sense, but in the general sense of dreaminess, what happens when one of them has their dreams crushed and another one of the personalities does not?